So 300,000 Albertans signed a petition to leave Canada. Is this confederation actually working for everyone? Challenge you'll face. AI to give me challenges at this point. Uh, Having it essentially play devil's advocate is quite useful. This is just political theater. There's no real appetite for separation. The Forever Canada petition got more signatures, and nobody talks about that. So the Forever Canada petition was a very similar petition to the Separatist one, but it was for staying a part of Canada. I think it got like 400,000 signatures. Separation one got 300,000. So there's actually a lot more. There's a lot more momentum and support for the Forever Canadian petition. But you don't hear much about it compared to the separatism movement. So we're gonna have a look at this. Partly true, which means we validate it and then pivot to why it doesn't win the argument. Okay, let's get the facts. The Forever Canadian petition, certified by Elections Alberta in December 2025, collected 404,293 verified signatures, representing 13.6% of Albertans' electors. I guess that makes sense. Population. Okay. That is more than the 301,000 submitted by Stay Free Alberta this week. Okay, yeah. This is the two petitions operate under completely different rules. And let's see. Oh, yeah. Luke Messu filled the Forever Canadian petition under an older, stricter set of rules, which required collecting a staggering 293,000 physical signatures. So the actual Forever Canadian petition passed as a petition under a much stricter rule set that has recently been made significantly lighter or easier to fulfill. Nearly double the threshold Stay Free Alberta has to meet, even though they did get over that number. Since then, the Alberta government amended the Citizen Initiative Act. Oh yeah, here it is. Lowering the signature requirement and giving petitioners more time to collect them. The government changed the rules to make it easier for separatists to succeed and harder to use the pro-Canada precedent as a benchmark. That's a deliberate political choice. So let me just see. The Forever Canada petition had a higher benchmark, and it passed that. They lowered the benchmark for the separatist petition, and so that also passed. Although it did have the required Stay Free Alberta this week, it did have the required signature, the old one. The Forever Canadian petition won, and then the government essentially shelved it. 5 months after the Forever Canadian petition was verified, the organizer accused the UCP government of dragging its feet and delaying the democratic process. Opposition critics say the Liberals were being sidelined to allow the separatist petition time to get its question on the referendum ballot. They delay whenever it's a voice that they don't want to listen to, said one NDP member of parliament. member of Legislative Assembly. Okay. Lucas himself said, for lack of a better term, the process is a sham. He accused Premier Smith, UCP, of playing a cynical political game. So the counter argument here challenge. Yes, more people signed the pro-Canada petition, and the government responded to. In response was to slow walk it while fast tracking the separation question. That's the story. So they're delaying the pro-Canada petition. Like, does that mean if the separatist question, essentially, if they get a petition, okay, so land the real point. The Forever Canadian petition proves your argument, not theirs. I mean, I don't know how I have a set argument, actually. I don't know what this thinks my set argument is. If 2/3 of Albertans want to stay in Canada, and those voices are being procedurally sidelined by the governing party, then this isn't really about what Albertans want. It's about what Danielle Smith and her political coalition want. It's a very different story and a more alarming one. Okay. Before we continue, I just gotta... If a petition is passed in Alberta, what happens? Did they get a vote on something? I assume, like, you pass the petition, you get a referendum vote. That's what it's called. So, what does that look like? I'll go back up and I'll get to the rest. That a double question. Ooh. Perfect. Oh, it's on thinking mode. We'll continue while it does that. Why it matters right now, the full context. Okay. The grievances are real, but widely misunderstood. Most Canadians outside Alberta have Carcantium?
Caricature.
Caricature. That means a light understanding. Fine. Character. Okay. Clearly that's not the way they're using it. Or performance that intentionally exaggerates, distorts, or simplifies the key features of a person or thing to create a humorous satire or insulting effect. Second one. Caricature. Most Canadians outside of Alberta have a caricature of the movement. Angry oil workers waving Wexit flags. Reality is more substantive. The core grievance is fiscal and economic. Over 20 years from 2000 to 2019, Alberta sent a net $324 billion more to Ottawa that was set back in Alberta. Whoa. So this is a net. So they've sent more. Isn't like the deficit spending in Canada like 50 or 60 billion usually? And that's as a whole country. And Alberta has sent 324 billion more to Ottawa than was sent back to Alberta. Roughly 78,000 per person, or 319,000 per family of 4. Oh, hey, that's a lot of money. This is over the 20-year period. Still, like, you can buy a house. I mean, not in one of the big cities, but outside of them, in smaller communities with that amount of money. Now, the important nuance: Alberta doesn't technically pay into equalization. No province does. It's a federal program funded by federal tax, is collected at the same rate across the country. The issue is that Albertans, being wealthier on average, pay more in federal taxes and get proportionally less federal spending back. But the emotional math is simple. Albertans feel like they've been bankrolling the country for decades while having their primary industry, oil and gas, blocked, regulated, and demonized by the same federal government they fund. Like that's been a big issue. From my understanding, Carney, the current Liberal leader, is far more permissive of oil and other kinds of energy. But the past, like under Trudeau, there was a big push for like save the environment kind of stuff, and it really prevented any kind of expansion into oil and gas, and couldn't get a pipeline built, which is how you export oil and gas. They're kind of necessary, and this is something that has provided 324 billion more to Ottawa, and they were largely preventing expansion at all into this area. Yeah, okay. I should continue reading before I go on talking. Add pipeline cancellations, Northern Gateway, Energy East, carbon pricing, emission caps, and a federal government that has been liberal for most of the last 30 years. You have a genuine structural political governance, structural political grievance, not just noise. So I think they are, like, again, wasn't there a pipeline just recently announced to the US? I think I'm gonna need to open another one to ask. I don't want to. Already got too many things. But didn't Trump just sign pipeline? No, like the US, there's multiple layers to their system, and I think it passed like the first layer. Has there recently been a pipeline deal between Alberta and the US? Where does that stand? What do I need to get down here? Great question. Okay, so if a petition passes, what happens? This is where it gets genuinely fascinating, because there are actually two separate referendum tracks running simultaneously in Alberta right now. Let me break down the whole thing down step by step so you can explain it clearly. Perfect. What happens after an Alberta petition passes? The complete breakdown. The two tracks running right now. Before the process, you need to understand there are two different referendum situations happening at once, and most people are conflating them. Track 1, Smith's government referendum. Who initiated it? Premier Danielle Smith. What's on it? 9 questions on immigration and Constitutional reform. I think I've gone through the more on here. Date confirmed, October 19th, 2026. Status already happening. Is it binding partially? Track 2, Stay Free Alberta petition. Okay. Citizen via Stay Free Alberta. On it, one question about Alberta independence. Date confirmed, not confirmed yet. Legally blocked. Ooh, this is the thing they're talking about. Like the Stay Free Alberta being blocked. Status stuck in court. Is it binding? Would not be legally binding either. I mean, like these are referendum questions, right? You're just getting a documented note on how the people in the province feel on a subject. It's not specifically legally binding in quite the way that Brexit seemed to be, right? Like they voted yes on Brexit by slim majority and then they pushed through with it. That wouldn't happen in this case. But getting documented note on exactly where the people stand, that's just it's good for pushing forward like the Stay Free Alberta or the Separatism, if you think that's the way it'll go. Track 1, how the referendum process works. What's already happening. Step 1, the government decides to hold one. Smith announced the October 19th referendum in a televised address on February 19th, 2026. She said she wants Albertans to vote on 9 questions based on what the Alberta Next panel heard from Albertans during town halls and written submissions. The questions cover immigration reform and constitutional changes. This track didn't need a petition at all. The Alberta government can call a referendum whenever it wants. Okay, this is the one we're more interested in. Step 2. Orders in council set the question and whether they're binding. No, okay. So this is still a part of the first one. Here's a part almost nobody covers. The government decide in advance which results it would have to legally honor. The Referendum Act allows cabinet to put questions to Albertans in 2 forms: constitutional questions and non-constitutional. Cabinet also decides before the vote whether results will be legally binding, and that decision was made March 31st, 2026, before the campaign even began. Here's how it breaks down. The 4 constitutional questions, legally binding on Alberta's government if passed. Abolish the federal Senate. Requires unanimous consent of all provinces plus parliament to actually happen. The Senate in Canada serves very, very little purpose. Like, I'm sure some people can create a reason for it to exist, but there's nothing that the House couldn't do. Anything that the Senate provides, the House could just do. Pretty much already does. So I've never really understood the need for it. We copied the system from Great Britain or the UK, and the Senate was where they had like the Lords still got to sit, and we copied that for some reason, and then we like used part from the US to like fill it, like copy their Senate to fill it. And I mean, I don't like the US Senate either. I don't think that's a good system. But anyway, give provinces power to appoint their own King's Bench and appeal court judges. Like, I think I've looked into this one a little bit. For judges, there's good reason to give power to provinces, and then there's good reason not to give power to the province. and to try and get them as unpolitical as possible. I'm not gonna decide any of the because these are the questions that are showing up, and these are the legally binding ones. I didn't know the other ones weren't. Allow provinces to opt out of federal programs in healthcare, education, social services, and keep the federal funding. So the provinces will get control over the healthcare, education, and social. How funding is allocated. I don't know, like, what does the federal system provide? I couldn't make a decision on that until I look more. Give provincial laws priority over conflicting federal laws in areas of shared jurisdiction. I mean, if it's shared jurisdiction, then people more on the ground in the provincial, that's probably better. But I'd have to look at some. The 5 immigration/policy questions explicitly declared non-binding. Questions on immigration control, restricting social services to non-permanent residents, requiring 12 months. Okay. Even if Albertans vote yes on every immigration question, the government has no legal obligation to act on any of them. This is a huge deal that most people don't know. Smith's government gets to campaign for yes on all 9 questions. Public money. So they're campaigning yes on all 9 questions. So they want the government, or the Smith's government wants yes the whole way down. And they've designed the questions such that, like, yes, like, they could just tell people vote yes on all of them. Okay. Smith's government gets to campaign for yes on all 9 questions using public money, then is only actually obligated to follow through on 4 of them. And even those 4 require the government to cooperate to implement. Step 3, the vote happens October 19th. Elections Alberta confirms the referendum is set for October 19th. Each referendum question will be on a separate ballot. Results from the unofficial ballot count must be completed in specific timelines, 12 hours after close of voting if there are 1 or 2 questions, scaling up to 36 hours for 4, 5, or 6. With 9 questions, this will take the longest timeline. Every eligible Albertan voter gets 9 separate ballots. Yes or no on each question individually. Oh, that just sounds like a pain. You telling me I'm gonna have to deal with 9 different pieces of paper? Why can't they just be in a list? What happens after a yes? For the binding constitutional questions, a yes result legally obligates Alberta's governments to take steps within its own jurisdiction, passing legislation, motions, writing to the other premiers, and launching court challenges. But here's the catch: none of the constitutional changes can actually happen without Ottawa or other provinces. Yeah, like even the legally binding ones that we were reading up here, like you don't just get to decide this. This is just showing that there's the will of the people is to get this, and so they're going to attempt to do this. And then if, for example, they get the yes vote for provinces to appoint their own King's Bench and Appeals Court judges, they can then go to Ottawa and be like, are you going to disagree with the people? Or can we appoint our own King's Bench and Appeals Court judges? So it gives them support of the populace in order to try and create the reform. Okay, where was I? None of the constitutional changes can actually happen without Ottawa and other provinces agreeing. Abolish the Senates, require unanimous consent for every province plus parliament. It's useless, but I don't see it getting unanimous consent. Someone's gonna disagree. Provincial appointments of judges requires a 7-5 rule. 7 provinces representing 50% of Canada's population. So yes. Result obligates Smith to try. It doesn't obligate Ottawa to say. For the non-binding questions, nothing legally happens. The government treats it as public opinion polling on expensive ballots. Okay, this is the one we're more interested in. And citizen initiative, the citizen initiative petition, the separatist question. This is the one everyone is watching. Here's how this entire separation process works. Okay, this is what I want to know. Step 1, petition is submitted. Stay Free Alberta submitted 301,620 signatures to Elections Alberta on May 4th, 2026. So, Stay Free Alberta. This one I gotta go up here for a second. I gotta find out the name of the other one again. Forever Canada was the stay petition. Stay a part of Canada. They got like 400,000 signatures. Stay Free Alberta was the petition that was for separation. Stay Free Alberta. Then why not separate Alberta? That's going to confuse me. Yeah, the proposed question is, do you agree that the province of Alberta should cease to be a part of Canada, become an independent state? Very clear question. Do you agree with that? I personally do not, but I don't mind using the pressure, try and reduce that equalization system. Highly disadvantages. Step 2, verification. Currently blocked by court. Petition verification is on hold pending an Alberta Court of King's Bench decision. Once the justice permits, Election Albertas will have 21 days to verify the petition using a method designed to achieve a 95% confidence. Verification also now includes a new wrinkle. The Chief Electoral Officer directed that the verification process be amended to check if any seeded names from the leaked Republican Party of Alberta voter list are contained in the petition. Ooh, I remember hearing about that. A lot of voter information for Albertan voters was released, and so now they're worried that someone could just copy that information and be like, "Look, they signed." They're just taking their information. I mean, that makes sense. A mechanism designed to detect if the stolen voter data was used improperly to collect signatures. That's gonna be so hard to do. I mean, how do you even do that? Make Republican Party of Alberta. Okay. If verified, referred to Justice Minister. For a successful constitutional referendum petition, Elections Alberta submits a copy of the proposal to the Minister of Justice and Societor General. It then goes to the Premier to decide whether to schedule a referendum. So why did the one for staying in Canada, why did that one not go to this step? Why is that one being held? Because that petition passed. That's the stricter referendum laws than stay free Alberta. Where is it? Forever Canada petition. Stay free Alberta. I cannot get these up. Stay free Alberta. Let me write these down. So the Forever Canada one passed, held up, and the Stay Free is currently also passed, but is held up because of this. Seated names from a leaked Republican Party of Alberta voter list are contained in the petition. So the Chief Electoral Officer directed that the verification process must be amended. Check if any seated names from the leaked Republican Party of Alberta voter list are contained in the petition. A mechanism designed to detect if the stolen voter data was used improperly to collect signatures. So that where the Stay Free Alberta petition is stuck. Okay, step 3. If verified, refer to Justice Minister for successful constitutional referendum petition. Elect Alberta submit a copy of the proposal to the Minister of Justice and Solicitor General. Then it goes to the Premier to decide whether to schedule a referendum. Again, like, there's technically nothing legally binding about a referendum. It's just getting like an official vote from the citizens of the province on the topic and where the people stand. Step 4. Premier calls the referendum if she wants to. Political scientist Laurie Williams says a referendum on independence is increasingly likely to go forward even if courts order the petition unconstitutional, because the separatist group has indicated that the Premier has power under the Referendum Act to call one anyways, and there will be pretty intense pressure on her to do so. In other words, Smith could add the independence question to the October 19th ballot, regardless of what happens in court with the petition. Using her own executive power under the Referendum Act, she has said she's open to it but won't commit. Albertans vote on should Alberta leave Canada. If the independence question makes it to the ballot, Albertans vote yes or no. But here's the critical legal reality most coverage misses. What a yes vote on independence actually means legally. This is the most important part for your stream. Because the separatists and the media often make it sound like a yes vote equals independence. It doesn't. I mean, it certainly doesn't. The legal system for separation, like, next to impossible. Like, whether you want to separate from Canada or not, the actual system of doing it is basically impossible. like you need to go through what, like the 750 rule or something, if you want to try and separate. Like, okay, let's just continue reading. Clarity Act, the Federal Gatekeeper. The Federal Clarity Act of 2000 outlines the process that applies in the case of a successful provincial separation referendum. A province does not have the authority to unilaterally secede from Canada. Any referendum question on secession must be clear, unambiguous. I think the question we read up earlier was very clear and unambiguous. And the vote requires a clear majority, not just 50% plus one, for the federal government to enter negotiations. What's a clear majority? Like, is that a super majority? Do they need like 60%? Oh gosh, that's what that either. Clear majority. Let's just see if it gives me a quick question. Oh, I have thinking on it. Okay, we'll come back to that. As I ignore the last thing that I clearly said I'd come back to. Under the Clarity Act, the House of Commons determines whether the referendum question was sufficiently and whether the majority was sufficiently clear to justify negotiations. The court did not create a right to unilaterally succeed, it created a conditional duty to negotiate. What is a clear majority? Okay, that's not gonna. That one got distracted. So it's more than 50%. This says it's not just 50%. So like what percentage of the vote do you need? So it comes up a clear majority. Is significantly more than half the votes members or people. 50. It typically represents a 50 plus one scenario or higher, ensure your winner. A party in power holds more capacity in parliament. Okay, so it's not a clear majority. Doesn't seem to have a more than 50 plus one. Not really helpful. Okay, translation. Even if 60% of Albertans voted yes, the federal parliament could look at the question, decide it wasn't clear enough, or the majority wasn't big enough, and refuse to negotiate. Carney's liberal majority government would almost certainly take that position. I mean, that would look really bad for them. If 60% of Albertans signed a petition for separation, I don't think that'll happen. But if they did, and then his government decides, oh, we're just going to ignore it, then that looks horrible on the liberal government. The Indigenous rights wall. Legal scholars argue that Indigenous people must be a part of any negotiation, and succession is simply impermissible where they do not consent, at least with existing borders intact. Yes vote in a referendum by itself has no other legal effect in basic international law terms. Three major First Nations group: Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation, Blackfoot Confederacy, Athabasca Chippewan. Okay. are already in court blocking the petition. So there's another legal hurdle here that the petition has to go through. And even if it like gets through, even if they hold this up in court like this, the premier can still just put it on the ballot because she has the right to put these questions on. I don't understand, because the name right, the Forever Canada petition passed as well, and that's also being held. But I guess it like, if you put either question on, you're getting the consensus of the people of where they stand. Like, do you want to stay a part of Canada? Well, the people that don't vote yes are the ones that are part of the Separatism. Do you want to separate from Canada? The people that like you still get both sides no matter how you ask the question. I'm wondering why they didn't put the first question. Like, it got more support. The negotiation would take years. Even in an optimistic scenario for separatists, path runs from referendum, federal act review, multiple negotiations, treaty consultation, blah 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 blah. Each stage carries direct cost, years of process, but the bill arrives on day one. So, I mean, if this takes years, then you look at how yeah, let me see if I can find Quebec's opinion on separation over time. If I can get this image, because I've seen this one before. Like, it varies wildly. And usually there's only small moments where you can get a separation vote through. And then it's like back to being, oh, more people want to stay than separate now. And then what, do you just stop the process when it swings that back that way? I don't know. I don't know where I saw that chart. I'm not going to full picture and diagram. Alberta can hold a referendum. Albertans can vote yes, and none of that actually makes Alberta independent. What it does is create the most politically explosive leverage Alberta has had in 100 years. And Danielle Smith is using that leverage very carefully, because she knows the moment the pressure disappears, so does her political power. I mean, that about sums it all up right there. It's a leverage for political power. That's what the separatist movement. I mean, if she uses that political power to get more resources for the province, because this whole thing stems from what, 320 something billion that Alberta has paid more to Ottawa than it's received in resources, essentially, like education and healthcare. That's a huge amount of money for 20 years. Came out to like what, $80,000 per person in Alberta. Okay, I was looking at a pipeline here. Yes, there was a major development just last week on May 1st, 2026. US President Donald Trump signed a presidential permit authorizing the Bridger pipeline expansion, a project often referred to in industrial circles as Keystone Light. Here is where the project stands and what the deal involves. Keystone Deal, Bridger Pipeline Expansion. The project is a joint venture between Calgary-based South Bow Corp and the US-based Bridger Pipeline LLC. It is designed as a more politically and environmentally efficient version of the canceled Keystone XL. The expansion starts at the US-Canadian border in Phillips County, Montana, and runs approximately 1,050 kilometers south to Guernsey, Wyoming. I don't need to go. Current status. While the present permit is a massive hurdle cleared, the project is not yet shovels in the ground. Permitted, the federal cross-border permit is secured, but the project still requires state-level environmental reviews in Montana and Wyoming, as well as permits from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for waterway crossings. Construction is currently targeted to begin in 2027, with the first oil expected to flow by late 2029. So I like how you look at Trump and you look at Carney, like, oh, they're still in like a trade war, and then you look at the corporations and they're like, well, we're building a pipeline, get more oil down there. Like, things are still going here. Avoids reservations. The route does not cross any Native American reservation. Well, I mean, they're moving forward with pipeline expansion. It's something that was continuously stopped under the last government, so seems to be working in the right way. It looks like this whole separatism movement thing is a move for Danielle Smith to get political power. I mean, if she uses the political power to help Alberta and to get like more oil infrastructure, more pipelines and stuff through, I don't think a question will pass. I mean, you've seen it here. Forever Canada petition got more support than the Stay Free Alberta petition. But if the question shows up, like, that'll be interesting. I'll talk about it. When we get closer, I'll probably go through the 9 questions again. I think I did a short review on them in a previous stream. Ooh, here's a good one. Facts. See this. Stay Free Alberta. That's the separatist one. 301,000. Forever Canada. Stay a part of Canada. 404,000. And these had stricter requirements too. Needed a specific number of physical signatures, from my understanding of it. Albertans who'd vote to separate in a referendum. I mean, that's low. 27%. That's quite low. Committed. Cost acknowledged separatist 15 to 16%. Cost acknowledged. They understand all the cost. I mean, even if a referendum votes, as we've learned, it doesn't technically lead to anything. UCP supporters who'd vote for separation. 57%. Hey, voters who'd leave Alberta if it's separated. Oh. Voters who leave Alberta if it's separated. Oh. That seems a little crazy. Calgary Chambers of Commerce members worried separation raises recession risk. Absolutely. Separation would raise a recession risk. Like, the entire economy that you've created with the founding of Alberta would change instantly. Like, the only thing where you'd have some relevance is the oil system, but like some stability, but everything else, like, based off current law set. Cost of separation, 3,900. Burns lost neck. Like, it doesn't sound like a good idea. It sounds like a useful tool that the premier is using to try and leverage her position to get more funding, essentially. Because this all comes down. The money. 324 billion more to Ottawa sent back in Alberta. 79,000 per person over the past 20 years. That's what it all comes down to. And I assume she's attempting to use this leverage to try and scrape some of that money back. Which, I mean, like, I agree with. Go for it. I certainly wouldn't vote as an Albertan to leave. But if you get the question on the referendum, get to show like, oh, this many people want to leave because of this economic situation. How do we resolve the economics that gives you power going to Ottawa? Which is a lot of what the referendum is. Did I ever get through this part? I think I got distracted after. See. Numbers are more complicated than either side admits. Here's what makes this a great stream topic. The data is genuinely nuanced. CBC News random survey of 1,200 Albertans in April 2026 found 27% would vote for separation. That's pretty recent. While 67% would vote against. Support has held essentially flat for over a year despite months of high-profile campaigning. But here's the layer most people missed. In most polling, people who want to leave no matter what makes up only around 8 to 10% of Albertans. So basically, the number of 27 drops to 8 to 10 as soon as concessions are given, right? There's 27% of people who... Okay, so there's 17% of people-ish who would vote separation just to get the advantage, just to get concession. The other 15 to 20% are what political scientists called symbolic or soft separatists. Maybe I'm wrong. Willing to vote yes in a referendum to send a message to Ottawa, not because they actually want independence. Okay, so pretty much what I was saying. Okay, they want to send a message. They don't like how we're losing. I think that's all. 20 years, that's a lot. IPSOS, stress test separation sentiment by introducing real world consequences, economic cost, loss to federal programs, uncertainty, actual commitment support for separation dropped to roughly 15 to 16% of Albertans when costs were made concrete. But what does the. This is what you had to do for Brexit. Like, you had to make sure they understood the cost. And surprisingly, or not, the number goes way down once they understand the cost. But this is mostly the people that just want to send a message, right? So they're gonna say yes, I'll vote for separate. Send the message to Ottawa. It doesn't look like there's any chance of separation. It does look like we might get a referendum question on it though, which will be very interesting. What does the petition actually represent? Likely a mix of true believers, protest votes, and people who are furious about the cost of living and want Ottawa to feel it. Pretty much. Part that makes it dangerous. Ooh, okay. Danielle Smith's political trap. Premier Smith has consistently said she supports a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. That sounds an awful lot like how Quebec talks. They like to talk like they're a country within a country. Okay. Polling shows 57% of UCP supporters would vote for separation, meaning Smith's own base is well ahead of her on this issue. Political scientist put it plainly. What the separatists don't want is Danielle Smith to campaign against separatism. They would rather have her keep her mouth shut. So her political party, UCP, what are the political parties in Alberta and what percentage of support do they have? Polling shows 57%, so if her party would vote for separation. And they're worried that she would campaign against separatism. They just want her to keep her mouth shut. UCP. Right? UCP. United Conservative Party. Danielle Smith. So she's currently got. Okay, so she's got about 50% of the support. Half of her members want to separate, so that's 25%. And the part of the population that says they'd vote yes, 27. So the entire separatist movement is under United Conservative Party. And even then, a lot of them are send a message yes voters. Look at how just like the liberals are. The New Democratic Party is the second one here in Alberta. This is the political trap. Smith can't enthusiastically oppose separation without losing her base. She can't enthusiastically support it without a constitutional crisis. So she walks a tightrope, calling a referendum, letting the process pay out, hoping the no side wins without her having to say so. This is a deeply unstable political position, and it's happening right now. So she doesn't want this at all. Like, my thought was she was using this separatist movement to try and pressure Ottawa into being able to keep more oil money, essentially. Turns out she's in a political crisis and she just wants nothing to do with it. just let the no vote win. Don't. Maybe this is why the Forever Canada petition also got held up, because the Forever Canada one is to stay a part of Canada, but if you put that on there, you indirectly, through a no vote, are doing a separatist petition, right? So she can't have either of them. She doesn't want either of them to get out there. That's a shitty position to be in. This is a deeply unstable political position. Indigenous right could be the deciding factor. This is the most underreported dimension of the whole story. They're currently holding it up in court. A group of Alberta First Nations launched a court challenge arguing the separatist petition violates treaty right. As an Edmonton judge ordered a pause on the signature validation process until the courts ruled. This matters enormously. Treaties between First Nations and the Crown of Canada are federal agreements. Alberta, as a provincial government, cannot unilaterally exit those obligations. Any legitimate... Yeah, and like... the First Nations, they're territories. They don't like align with the provincial borders, right? You see the what are they, the Kurds in the Middle East, that where they occupy covers like 4 or 5 different countries. The First Nations territories in Canada kind of do the same thing. So if Alberta wants to separate, you could cut their territory in half. That's not going to happen, right? So I assume that's why they're going to the courts with it. Honestly, maybe this doesn't become a vote. I don't know. If it does become a vote, I expect it to lose. But continue. Alberta, as a province, cannot unilaterally exit those. 1998 Supreme Court decision confirmed that a province cannot unilaterally secede. It would have to negotiate its departure with the rest of Canada. Translation: even a referendum passed, Alberta couldn't just leave. The legal and constitutional path to actual independence is so complicated as to be nearly impossible in any near-term scenario. Ooh. This is interesting. The U.S. dimension. The wildest card. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Benson has publicly suggested the U.S. would work with a separated Alberta, saying he thinks we should let them come down into the U.S. Most Albertans, 73 to 77%, believe the U.S. would use political or economic pressure to compel Alberta to join if it succeeds. I mean, I'm part of that statistic. The Alberta Prosperity Project met with the U.S. State Department and Treasury 3 times between April 2025 and January 2026, suggesting the movement has gone beyond symbolism and is exploring realistic independent deals with the U.S. This is the dimension that most Canadians haven't fully processed. Alberta separatism isn't just about leaving Canada or a significant faction. It's about joining or aligning with the United States. In the current geopolitical moment, with Trump actively musing about annexing Canada, that is no longer a theoretical concern. Yeah, that's a dimension I haven't thought about a whole lot. Like US pressure. How does that change things? So, the premier is in a political situation and kind of just wants this to go away. If it doesn't go away, and she's pressured by her base, we might end up with the separatist question on the referendum, with the other question in October. If the yes wins, which I do not expect to happen, there could be US pressure for the secession, which would be that would be a okay. Let's summarize it in one line. Alberta separatism isn't really about leaving Canada. It's about forcing Canada to take Alberta seriously. The problem is that once you start the game, you can't always control where it ends. I think that's a good way to end it.